This story happened in 2020 in a quiet neighborhood outside Portland. A woman named Claire lived alone in a small wooden house. Her backyard was large, too large for a normal suburban home, and behind it, a thick stretch of forest, the kind where sound disappears at night. No neighbors behind her house, no streetlights, just trees and darkness. The first light, it started with something simple, a light. Around 1:52 a.m., Claire woke up suddenly. She didn't know why. Her room was silent. Then she noticed it, a faint glow outside her window. She sat up. The light was coming from the backyard. At first, she thought it was someone with a flashlight, maybe a neighbor, but the light wasn't moving like a normal flashlight. It hovered, slowly drifting between the trees. Claire got out of bed and walked toward the window. She pulled the curtain slightly and looked outside. The light stopped, as if it noticed her. For a few seconds, it stayed completely still. Then suddenly, it disappeared. The second night, the next night, Claire stayed awake. She kept her eyes on the backyard. 1:30 a.m., nothing. 1:50 a.m., still nothing. Then at exactly 1:52 a.m., the light appeared again. Same spot, same soft glow, but this time there were two lights, floating side by side. Claire felt uneasy. That's not normal. She grabbed her phone and started recording. The lights moved slowly through the trees, not like flashlights, not like cars. They moved like they were searching. Then one of the lights suddenly dropped low, close to the ground, and began moving toward her house. Claire stepped back from the window. Her heart started racing. The light stopped just before reaching the backyard fence. And then it went out. The camera. The next day, Claire installed two cameras, one facing the backyard, one facing the forest. That night, she didn't sleep. She watched the camera feed on her laptop. 1:52 a.m. came again. Nothing. She frowned. Was I just imagining it? Then the screen flickered. Static flashed across the camera feed. Then the lights appeared. This time there were three, all deeper in the woods. Claire zoomed in. The lights were not random. They were moving in a pattern, like they were circling something. Then suddenly, all three lights turned and faced the house. Claire felt a chill run through her body. They're looking at me. The shape. Claire stared at the screen. The lights stayed still for a few seconds. Then slowly they started moving toward the backyard. But this time she noticed something else. Between the lights, there was a shape. Tall, thin, almost blending into the darkness. The lights weren't separate. They were attached. To it, Claire leaned closer to the screen. No. The lights were not lights. They were eyes. Three glowing eyes on a figure that should not exist. The backyard. Claire grabbed a flashlight and walked to the back door. I need to see this for myself. She opened the door slowly. Cold air rushed in. The backyard was silent, too silent. No wind, nothing. She stepped outside. The grass felt damp under her feet. She pointed the flashlight toward the trees. Nothing. No lights. No figure. But then she heard something, a faint whisper, coming from the woods. Claire? She froze. Who's there? No answer. Then again. Claire, much closer. The third night, Claire locked every door, closed every window, and stayed inside. 1:52 a.m., the lights appeared again. But this time, they weren't in the woods. They were in the backyard, right outside the house. Claire watched the camera feed. The three lights hovered just above the ground. Then slowly, they rose, until they were level with the window. Claire stepped back. Her breathing became heavy. They're here. Then, the camera glitched. The screen turned black. The inside. Claire turned away from the laptop. Her room was dark. Then she heard it. From the hallway. A soft sound, like something moving. inside the house? No. She grabbed her phone. The camera app was still open, but the backyard feed was gone. Instead, the camera showed something else, a different angle. Inside the house, the hallway, and at the end of the hallway, a tall figure stood with 3 glowing eyes, watching her. The final night, Claire tried to run, but the hallway was silent, empty. Nothing was there. She checked every room. Nothing. Then she returned to her bedroom and slowly turned toward the window. The lights were gone. The backyard was empty. Claire collapsed onto her bed. It's over. But her phone buzzed. One last notification. Motion detected. Backyard camera. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The camera showed the empty yard. Then slowly, the view shifted as if something was holding the camera, turning it toward the house, toward her window. And then, the 3 lights appeared again, closer than ever, and a voice whispered through the phone speaker, "We're inside now." The next morning, Claire's house was found empty. No damage, no footprints, nothing. The cameras were still running, but all footage from that night was corrupted, except one frame, a single image, taken at exactly 1:52 a.m. It showed Claire's backyard, and standing near the window, a tall figure with 3 glowing eyes, looking inside, waiting. This story comes from a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Austin. It happened in 2022. A man named Eric lived alone in a small house at the edge of the neighborhood. Behind his house was a large open backyard. Beyond that, a dense patch of woods, the kind where sunlight barely touched the ground. At night, it became completely dark. No streetlights, no houses, just trees and silence. The first night, it started with a sound. Around 2:13 a.m., Eric woke up suddenly. At first, he thought it was just a dream, but then he heard it again. Tap, 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 coming from outside his window. Slow, rhythmic, like someone gently tapping on glass. Eric sat up in bed. His room was dark. The only light came from the faint glow of the street outside. He looked toward the window. Nothing was there. The tapping stopped. Eric stayed still for a few seconds. Then he shook his head. "Probably a branch," he whispered. There were trees close to the house. It made sense. He lay back down and closed his eyes. The second night, the next night, it happened again. Same time, 2:13 a.m. Tap, tap, tap. This time louder, more deliberate. Eric didn't move immediately. He just listened. The sound came again. Not random, not a branch. It sounded intentional. Eric slowly got out of bed and walked toward the window. His heart started beating faster. He pulled the curtain slightly and looked outside. Nothing, just his backyard. Dark, empty. The grass moved slightly in the wind, but there was no one there. Then suddenly, tap, right in front of his face. Eric jumped back. Something had hit the glass from outside, but there was nothing there. The camera. The next day, Eric installed a security camera facing the backyard. He placed it near the window. "If something is out there, I'll see it tonight," he said. That night he stayed awake, watching the camera feed on his phone. Time passed slowly. 1:30 a.m., 2 a.m., 2:10 a.m. Everything was quiet. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., the camera glitched. The screen flickered. Static appeared for a moment. Then it returned to normal. Eric leaned closer. The backyard looked the same, but something felt off. The camera angle hadn't changed, but the image looked darker, like something was blocking the light. Then he saw it. Near the tree line, a shape, tall, thin, standing completely still. Eric held his breath. Is that a person? The figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching the house. Eric grabbed a flashlight and walked slowly toward the back door. The backyard, the night air felt cold, unnaturally cold. Eric stepped outside. The grass crunched under his feet. He pointed the flashlight toward the trees. Nothing. The figure was gone. "Hello," he called out. No answer. The woods were silent. Too silent. Then he heard it. From somewhere deeper inside the trees. A faint sound, like something moving slowly, dragging. Eric stepped back toward the house. This isn't right. He quickly went inside and locked the door. Then he checked the camera again. The backyard was empty, but when he rewound the footage, he saw something terrifying. The figure hadn't disappeared. It had moved. Closer. Much closer. And then, it wasn't in the backyard anymore. It was standing right outside the window, looking in. The face, Eric stared at the screen. The figure stood inches from the camera. Its body was tall and unnaturally thin. Its arms hung too long, almost touching the ground, but its face wasn't clear. It looked blurred, like the camera couldn't focus on it. But two things were visible. Its eyes wide, dark, and fixed directly on the lens. Eric slowly turned his head toward the window. The real window. The one behind him. He didn't want to look, but he had to. He turned and froze. Something was standing outside. Right there. In the dark. He couldn't see it clearly, but he knew it was looking at him. The third night, Eric didn't sleep. He stayed awake the entire night, holding a baseball bat, watching the window. At sunrise, the figure was gone. The next day, Eric called the police. They checked the backyard, found nothing. No footprints, no signs of entry. "Probably someone messing with you," they said. But Eric knew better. That night he locked every door, closed every window, and kept the lights on. 2:13 a.m. came again. Silence. No tapping. Eric felt relieved. Maybe it was over. Then his phone buzzed. A notification from the security camera. Motion detected. Backyard. Eric opened the app. The camera showed the backyard. Empty, but then the camera slowly tilted, as if something was touching it. Then the screen went black. The final moment, Eric stood up, his hands shaking. "That's it. I'm calling the police again." But before he could dial, he heard something inside the house, from the hallway. A slow dragging sound. Scrape. Eric froze. The sound came closer. From outside his bedroom door. Then tap, tap, tap. This time from the inside. On his door. Eric whispered, "No." The tapping stopped. Silence filled the room. Then a voice. Soft, right outside the door. "Let me in." Eric didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stood there, holding his breath. The next morning, police arrived at Eric's house. The front door was open. The house was empty. No signs of struggle, no blood, nothing missing. Eric was gone. The only strange thing they found was the security camera, still recording. The final footage showed the backyard, empty, quiet. Then slowly, from the trees, the tall figure walked into view. It stopped, looked directly into the camera, and tilted its head, as if it was listening. Then it spoke, in a distorted whisper. He let me in. The door handle slowly turned.